Hate to see it botched? Here's the best bits, a Botching It Up podcast short clip.
So saying that, is there anything you want to get off your chest?
Yes, I have two things that I want to talk about concerning WWE Raw and how this is potentially influenced by the Bruce Prichard, Paul Heyman shift and how it's not working for me whatsoever. Honestly, can you think of a singles wrestler that has had a poorer string of opponents and a worse title reign than poor old McIntyre?
He's just got no strong contenders to make him look strong in return, has he?
See, I don't even think it's that, and this is what really bothered me about this week's Raw, which happened yesterday, Monday, the 22nd. So I looked back at his opponents since WrestleMania. He had Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, Seth Rollins at Money in the Bank, Bobby Lashley at Backlash, and now it's just been announced that Dolph Ziggler has been traded to Raw, and that will be Drew McIntyre's Extreme Rules opponent. To me, I'm not sure your opinion on Drew McIntyre, but he's impressed me quite a lot. He's a really strong babyface promo. His Money in the Bank match versus Seth Rollins was great and by far the best thing on the show. And I really enjoyed his little feud with Bobby Lashley. Why is Dolph Ziggler the challenger of the month? Do you think Drew McIntyre permanently having challengers of the month and going through the roster in that way, do you think that is beneficial to him to show that he's a monster that goes through pretty much everybody they have and only takes a month to completely throw them away? Or do you think that's detrimental to him and he actually does really need a storyline at this point?
Not just him, but the roster. It might look good for a month or two to build him up, but after a while, you're going to run out of contenders. You're going to run out of exciting matches. He needs something to use his time up, use his TV time up. And if he was involved in a story, it would be much more it would develop him because he doesn't feel like an exciting champion.
And this is the thing where I feel like they've really gone wrong this week with the Dolph Ziggler thing. Like, to me, Dolph Ziggler doesn't even feel like a TV main event.
No, this is very mid-cardish.
Yeah, when I watch Raw now, I feel like everything's mid-card. You've got Edge and Orton and then the mid-card. And I don't understand what's really going on here in terms of who you're trying to push and why, because all of the important things and all of the interesting things, apart from Edge and Orton, seem to be happening within the first 45 minutes of either Raw or SmackDown. But the point here is that Bobby Lashley came in with absolutely no heat. Nobody was interested in that storyline. With the help of MVP, definitely. They kind of sold it. And that match at Backlash, I don't know what your opinion was on this, because we had so much of wrestling at that point that we took a week off. But I really enjoyed that match at Backlash. And considering you've got an Extreme Rules, so-called Extreme Rules pay-per-view coming up this month, I would have assumed that you would have built on that feud.
I feel like they definitely could have had a rematch. There was room to work in a second match without Bobby Lashley looking weak and insufficient.
Wait, don't you just think as well, I know this brings up the old question of why gimmick pay-per-views exist, but if you have got Extreme Rules, at least try and play it in some way. At least you had Bobby Lashley, they had beef, they had heat, and they could have worked. It still would have been undercooked, but it would have been a match which you look at and say, right, well, yeah, okay, they're having a steel cage match or whatever. As opposed to Dolph Ziggler just going in completely cold. I woke up this morning and I watched Raw and it really pissed me off. Not because I hate Dolph Ziggler necessarily, but it feels like McIntyre cannot be bothered to play storyline mode in a WWE video game. And he just goes on for 5 minutes and plays exhibition. These people are being picked out of fucking nowhere. And, we were talking about Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect and how much we loved the fact that they mentioned a match that they had 2 years ago and the fact that they had some sort of chemistry and background with each other and history.
Yeah.
Well, this is what they used to bring Dolph Ziggler into the main event position on Raw. Dolph Ziggler said, "I made you, bro." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And I had to look up on Wikipedia that Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre were tag team championships in summer of 2018. And that's what this feud's about.
Yeah, they were involved in Baron Corbin's mid-card gang of lonely people that did nothing better to do.
So that's what you're basing this month's pay-per-view on?
The case of the person makes the belt doesn't make the champion. right? So this feels very mid-card. It feels so unimportant. Dolph Ziggler's always been a good hand. He's always been a great worker, but for some reason, we've just never seen him as a star that the WWE have wanted him to be. So
I
now,
don't think Dolph Ziggler or WWE sees him as the star that they wanted to
not
be anymore.
anymore, but a few years back they did.
So why has he been put in this position and Bobby Lashley's gone back to beating up R-Truth again?
Well, I feel like they're having a hard reset in the last 2 weeks of TV. For whatever reason, they brought. I mean, Dolph Ziggler wasn't even around, was he? Oh no, he was involved in the Mandy Rose storyline.
Yeah, he's literally coming out of a comedy feud with Otis. And meanwhile, somebody who took the ball and ran with it in Bobby Lashley and MVP, who actually impressed me considering I had no interest in them at all, has just been thrown away again. I didn't get it. I don't know whether Bobby Lashley's a Paul Heyman guy. I think he is a Paul Heyman guy.
But
if you're
Drew's a Paul Heyman guy as well. I thought that he was going to get depushed on purpose and even maybe drop the belt. I could see it happening.
you see Drew dropping the belt to Dolph.
No, not to Dolph, but very soon. I don't think Drew's going to have the length of reign he was going to have.
He's already had the saddest WWE Championship reign in history. What a wonderfully horrible way for it to go if Brock Lesnar came back when the first crowd came back and Drew McIntyre lost the belt. Because I can see that.
That'd be sadly ironic if he loses it to Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman is involved in the feud somehow.
The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about Raw, Big Show.
Big Show came back as face, right? So he's heel turned since WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Face turned again. Flopping all over the place, that guy.
Yeah. But, I mean, did you see what he did this week?
No,
I really hope you didn't, because this is going to really upset you, I think.
Oh, isn't he involved with the Randy Orton Christian stuff?
Right. So Big Show has a backstage promo saying it was great to be back last week. And he also plugs his Netflix show. His promo sort of consists of 4-year-old humor. And then just out of nowhere, he says, behind this exterior, there's an angry, heartless giant. And then obviously they have the Randy Orton segment. And apparently that's the route we're going down. Fresh off of the masterclass that Edge versus Randy Orton was, they've decided that Randy Orton is resuming his 2004 Legend Killer gimmick.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I was thinking the exact same thing, that he's just now the Legend Killer again as an older man.
Obviously, I think that's what's happening, right? But they don't have any legends. So they get Big Show out of retirement to say, hey, can you work Randy for like 5 minutes? Please.
You know what would have been a funner way of doing this is calling him the superstar killer, and instead of him trying to defeat legends, he now, as the legend, is trying to defeat all the younger guys that are meant to be the main event players. And then they could have used him to maybe up the stock in people like Drew McIntyre or, I don't know, Seth Rollins, whatever.
That's the thing that I was also going to play into, and I hope that they do play into. For sure, have Randy Orton have a 5-minute match with the Big Show and then punt him in the head. Whatever. That's okay. Make it build to something. Why not like put him with a younger guy who threatens to take out Orton, says I'm stealing your gimmick. Or as you said, set this up so that not Big Show, because it doesn't make storyline sense anymore, but you get a legend, Randy Orton punts him in the head, Drew McIntyre comes out and says, I'm sick of this, it's time I took you out. You know, I'm the guy now, you're the legend, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, that'd be far more interesting.
I don't understand why they're building, like, they've already given me Drew McIntyre versus Dolph Ziggler, and now we're getting, I assume, Randy Orton versus Big Show. Like, who the fuck wants to watch that pay-per-view right now?
Right, so I think there's a bigger problem here. So the investors review is coming up, right? Which means traditionally someone is getting fired.
Yeah.
And in this case, it was Paul Heyman. He was the scapegoat so that Vince can go to the investors and say, hey, we've made a change. We're going to fix something.
Just like Bischoff was last year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they think Bischoff was hired exclusively so they could do this. They do it every single time. Yeah, you laugh, but it seems to be their pattern. It seems to be how they are getting around investors getting pissed off of them. So a lot of people are saying WWE are panic booking because viewership is getting lower, it's getting worse, people aren't interested anymore. But I don't think it's panic booking anymore because They've been booking like this for the last 3 years. I think this is just now the new norm, and we got to get used
I
to
would
it.
agree that they're panic booking a little bit more than usual, but I thought that was because they couldn't be bothered to put a single shred of effort into anything until they saw a crowd again.
But they did the whole wild card thing again a couple of weeks ago, didn't they? And already that's been forgotten. It's gone. They're trying to bring these things in to try and build up viewership, and nothing works. And I fear that nothing works because all of this short term stuff is never going to work. They need to invest in someone like McIntyre for a good 6 months to get people interested in their program.
Do you know what builds up viewership, Ben?
What?
Creating a decent storyline.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't want Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre. It wasn't up there on my legend tier matches, which I savoured over for the next 2 years. But they did it. They threw it out there. They had MVP deliver some great promos. They had a great match at Backlash. They worked the submission gimmick. I was interested.
But is McIntyre and Bobby Lashley just two guys that are really good, doing the best with what they've got to play with?
That's the whole of WWE. You know you're going to get one good match a show, and it's actually sometimes less spotty than AEW's wrestling abilities. But you don't care because it's swarmed in this smog of shit.
Yeah, but my point being is the people on the card, the wrestlers, they're all professional and they're all really good at what they're doing. The people that are letting the show down is the people running the show, and I don't think Vince can see that. He's promoted Bruce Prichard to take over both Raw and SmackDown and fired Paul Heyman. And I mean, it might be a bit of a stereotype, but it's quite famous that Paul Heyman is willing to stand up for what he wants. So I can imagine he was arguing a lot with Vince backstage, where we all know Bruce Prichard is a bit of a yes man.
Well, apparently Vince wants ninjas on motorbikes and alligators in dumpsters.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, that's what's causing low ratings.
Yeah.
Because Street Profits were one of my favorite tag teams. Hell, War Machine, back when they were on the indie scene, were one of my favorite tag teams of all time. And since day one in NXT, they were held back from their true ability. And on the main roster, they're even worse.
That's the problem, man. You had Big Show recommending that War Machine and Street Profits actually had a match to settle their feud, and you had them acting like idiots saying, wow, that's a great idea. And then lo and behold, they had a match on Monday, and it was exactly the sort of match you would like. Fast-paced, no frills, big moves. I think you would have really enjoyed it, but I watched it, and as much as I enjoyed it, it's too little too late. So what's that, a 2-month turnaround for the Street Profits?
Yeah.
They're the goddamn tag team champions.
I don't know whether having the same creative team on both shows is a good idea or a bad idea. You're going to lose your brand identity a little bit, which might be a good thing because for someone like Charlotte, when she was on both shows, she was basically playing a different character on each show. So consistency might be better. But at the same time, if you're watching one show and it's identical to the other show, you're not going to tune into both. So I think the viewership is actually going to continue to decline.
I always thought after trying it over and over again since like 2002, the brand split, it never achieved anything. They never got it to get where they wanted it to. I thought they were finally setting into a really good routine with it. And you knew SmackDown was the so-called big stars with the shitty wrestling and the big promos and the big events and stuff. And Raw was the younger guys, hungry guys doing good matches and having their own little storylines. And it worked. It actually worked. I knew what I was tuning into Raw for, and I knew what I was tuning into SmackDown for. And I do understand your point about brand identity possibly becoming a good thing, because people like Charlotte and how they need to have their character altered so it fits one route. But giving me a product which I don't particularly enjoy anyway, and removing any resemblance of difference between those two products within the product means that I'm watching 6 hours a week of something I don't like at all. We both know that within the next couple of months, you won't even know that you're going to go tune in to SmackDown and see AJ, because AJ will be on Raw, AJ will be on SmackDown.
Well, the brand split's going to be over by the end of the year.
Yeah.
It just won't be a thing. And then next year, they'll do a brand split again, And every time they do it, it diminishes the impact because we've seen it happen and break so many times that we'll give
Nobody
up
really
caring about
wants
it.
to watch Baron Corbin versus Seth Rollins, but they're more likely to want to watch Baron Corbin versus Seth Rollins if they haven't seen it in a year and a
Yeah,
half.
exactly. Having drafts and having trades allows you to be able to do that. I mean, their roster is huge. I've never understood why they can't make this brand thing work.
I've never understand why they can't make anything work. I know a lot of people really enjoyed Raw this week. They said since the Prichard era, it's going quicker. I agree that it's going quicker. Like towards the end of the Paul Heyman stuff in the coronavirus, it got really, really long. Like it felt longer than 2.5 hours.
But again, about that, I've always wondered, was that Paul Heyman's fault, or was it that he is such a contrasting personality to Vince that there was so much arguing and conflicting on ideas that just nothing was getting done productively?
Oh yeah, no, I think that's what's happened. But you can already see with what I'm saying is you can already see within the shift the Pritchard effect coming to Raw. And yes, it is quicker to watch, but it's also more damaging to literally everything.
Yeah, I mean, Raw had 2 blow-off matches just on Raw, and neither of them felt like important, and you've just wasted months worth of story.
I just worry for Alistair Black, man.
There's a lot of people that are Paul Heyman guys, and I think that their run is going to be diminished to nothing now.
But I can just see Vince McMahon in about a month's time saying Drew McIntyre didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Based upon a non-existent crowd.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Paul Heyman even came out and said it's impossible to book the shows right now because you never know who's hot. The crowd reaction is so fake right now that we don't actually know who's over and who isn't because you can't gauge the live reaction.
Like, share, and subscribe to keep it botched up, brother.